Changing the course of a war for the survival of the human race doesn't often come to anyone, but it's especially rare for 8-year-olds to have the opportunity. Yet when Bingwen saw that it was within his grasp, he didn't hesitate. He was as respectful of authority as any child could be, but he was also keenly aware when he was right, and those in authority were either wrong or uncertain. Uncertainty was what surrounded Bingwen now, in a barracks building of an abandoned military base in southeast China. The men around him were Mobile Operations Police, MOPS, and Bingwen knew that, as an 8-year-old Chinese boy, he was only with them because Mazer Rackham had adopted him. How long would they allow him to remain with them, now that Mazer Rackham was gone? Gone and probably dead. Bingwen had seen plenty of death since the Formics first began spraying the fields of his homeland with a gas that turned all living tissues, plant and animal, into rotting jelly, breaking down into their constituent organic molecules, turning back into fertile soil. A vast compost heap, ready for whatever the Formics intended to plant in their place. The Formics killed indiscriminately. They slew harmless people at their labors, terrified people fleeing from them, and soldiers firing at them, all with the same implacable efficiency. Bingwen had seen so much death he was glutted with it. He was no fool. He knew that just because he needed Mazer Rackham to be alive did not mean that the Formics would not kill him. Here's why he was so certain that Mazer was alive. The team had succeeded in its mission. The plan was good, and if something had gone wrong, Mazer was the kind of resourceful, quick-thinking soldier who would see a way out and lead his men through it, whether he was the commander or not. That was what Bingwen had learned from watching Mazer Rackham. Mazer wasn't the leader of the MOPS team, but the MOPS soldiers were trained to think for themselves and to listen to good ideas, no matter whether they came from leaders, 8-year-old Chinese orphans who happened to be very, very good with computers, or a half-Maori New Zealander who had been rejected for MOPS training on the first go-round, but who persisted until he practically forced his way onto the team. Mazer Rackham was with the MOPS in China only because he was the kind of man who never, never, never gave up. I'm going to be that kind of man too, thought Bingwen. No. I am that kind of man. I'm small, young, untrained as a soldier, and as a child I'm someone these men expect to protect but never listen to. But they never expected to listen to Mazer Rackham either. Never expected him to be one of them. I'm going to find him, and if he needs saving, I'm going to save him, and then he can go back to taking care of me. Bingwen had been watching the monitor with the rest of them, when the lens on the barracks roof showed the impossibly bright flare of the nuclear explosion, followed by the mushroom cloud. They all knew what it meant. The team consisting of Captain Whit O'Toole, Mazer Rackham, and Kalinga had succeeded in piloting their Chinese drill sledges under the impenetrable shield that surrounded the lander, and then set off the nuclear device. If they had not reached their objective, they wouldn't have set off the nuke. But did they set it off as planned, with a timer that allowed them to dive back into the earth on their drill sledges and get clear of the blast zone? Or did they set it off as a suicidal act of desperation, barely managing to do it as the Formics prevented them from getting away? That was the uncertainty that filled the barracks now, 6 hours after the explosion. Should they wait for O'Toole, Kalinga, and Rackham to return? Or should they assume they were dead and go forward to try to assess the effectiveness of the attack? Bingwen would be useless on such a reconnaissance mission. His radiation suit had been designed for a small adult, which meant it hung on Bingwen's 8-year-old frame like an oversized sleeping bag. He had scrunched up the arms and legs in order to reach the feet and gloves, but the accordion effect forced him to stand bow-legged and waddle when he walked. When it was time for the MOPS to leave the barracks, Bingwen would be left behind, and they would be right to leave him. Meanwhile,